We're going to call the meeting for Akron City Council to order. Clerk will read the roll.
Taylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Mollett.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mamobian.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Swirsky. All members are present except for Swirsky.
Thank you. At this time, hold on one second. At this time, we're going to be led in prayer by Pastor Marissa Saunders. Immediately following our prayer, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask if Councilman Malik would be so kind to lead us in the pledge.
Okay, thank you, Madam President, and good evening, everyone. Let's bow our heads in a word of prayer. Lord, it's in the name of Jesus that we come to you this evening. We are just thankful that we have jobs tonight and that we are able to gather once again. We just thank you for another good day, and we just welcome you here into this council meeting this evening, Father. Lord, I'm praying and I'm asking, Lord, that the conversations will be easy, that you would provide whatever our leaders stand in need of, Lord. Lord, I lift up your public servants here who are on this call tonight, whatever they may stand in the need of financially, relationally, oh God, mentally, spiritually. I just ask that you will provide it, Lord. We thank you for the city of Akron. We ask that you will constantly have your hand upon our city and show us what we can do to make it better and greater for the generations to come. It's in the name of Jesus I pray and I thank you. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes from our previously held meeting have been provided. Are there any additions or corrections?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Can we get a second, Councilman Lombardo?
Second.
Roll call.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Mollett.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mamobian.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The minutes pass 12-0.
Before you is the consent agenda. Motion to approve, Councilman Fusco.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Can we get a second, Councilwoman Amobian?
Second.
Roll call.
Baylor.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Fusco.
Aye.
Hamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Mollett.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Mamobian.
Aye.
Campbell.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
The consent agenda passes 12-0.
We have no public hearings scheduled for this evening, so we'll move right into our old business, planning and economic development. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you, President Somerville. The report of the committees for time on 1 through and including 6. And the report of the committee on item number 7 is for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Any objections on suspension of the rules? Seeing and hearing none, the rules have been suspended.
Yes, thank you. This is it replicates last year. We had at the beginning of COVID passed this very same ordinance, and it had a time frame on it, as this one does too, and that is for the summer patio program to encourage restaurants and businesses to social distance and to utilize sidewalks, alleys, parking lots, etc. This too expires on November 30th. It will expire this year, but again, it encourages safety as well as social distancing and hoping that businesses are going to take advantage of this. So we recommend approval this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended and the committee's report is favorable. Roll call.
Taylor,
Aye.
Connor,
Aye.
Freeman,
Aye.
Fusco,
Aye.
Hamer,
Aye.
Lombardo,
Aye.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Malik,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Amobian,
Aye.
Samples,
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
This ordinance passes 12-0.
Councilman Fusco, what's your pleasure on the rest of the agenda?
Request of the committee is to time on the balance of the agenda.
Time will be granted. We'll now move to housing and neighborhood assistance. We do have 2 substitutes. We'll have clerk read in item number 1.
The substitute offered is an amendment offered by Mayor Horrigan, President Somerville, Malik, and Samples. Ordinance amending and or supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 150 Environmental Health Housing Code to add sections 150.51 and 150.52 to create legal defenses in an eviction matter for tenants who attempt to tender all past due rental payments to a landlord and capping the amount of reasonable late fees that a landlord may impose on a tenant and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco,
Request of the committee is to refer this item.
this item will be referred.
Substitute offered is amendment offered by Mayor Horrigan, President Somerville, and Councilman Malik. Ordinance amending and or supplementing Title 3, Chapter 38, Unlawful Discrimination, Section 38.01, Definitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Akron to prohibit discrimination on the basis of lawful source of income and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco,
Request of the committee is to refer this item as well.
this item will be referred. Public safety, Councilman Kamer.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee met this afternoon, and we did not have enough votes to get out of the committee.
Okay, thank you so much. That concludes our old business for this evening. We'll now move into new legislation.
Item number 1, offered by Fusco, ordinance approving the sale of city-owned property pursuant to the city's A Lot for a Little program in order to facilitate the productive reuse of the property and to reduce the cost to the city and the taxpayers in maintaining vacant lots, determining said property is not needed for public use and declaring an emergency.
Councilman Fusco,
Consent agenda.
this item will be placed on the consent agenda. That concludes our new business for this evening. We'll now move to the portion of our meeting that we refer to as our public comment period. Our clerk will play in comments received for this evening.
Hello, my name is Arn Engelhart. I'm living at 160 Overwood Road, Akron, Ohio. I am calling about the pay to stay and the tenant's source of funds. The ordinance will be very cumbersome to administer. and I feel it adds an extra burden for all involved, landlords, tenants, and the city. The preamble states that the UCR, Uniform Council Report, states that the purpose is to mitigate number of evictions during the pandemic. Therefore, I would urge that if it is passed, I would urge the council to rescind the legislation as soon as the pandemic no longer exists. It would be something then that would no longer be needed. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Good afternoon. My name is Camille Dickerson, and my address is 564 Dorchester Road, 44320. I'm in Ward 4, and I would like to express my concern about the pay to stay legislation that's on the docket, I suppose it's called now. I would like to let you know that I am a property owner, and after some information that I've learned, I suppose that I don't have a problem necessarily with the pay to stay legislation. I'm more concerned, and I certainly have no problem with the use of vouchers and non-discriminatory practices for any financial or income usage that individuals who are in need of housing will be using, because I think it's important that our country does provide a safety net for those people in need who need housing. However, I do have a problem if you're interested in making AMHA a protected status, because I don't feel that AMHA is a protected status. I think that they are not necessarily for the landlord, and I have had problems with them in the past. I have no problem with voucher use or any other income that a person who meets the criteria that I have for my housing happens to have. But I do have a problem if we have to accept people who are within the AMHA system, because like I said, I've had problems with them in the past, and I don't think that they have the best interest of property owners at heart. That is all. Thank you very much for listening to my comments, and have a great day. Goodbye.
Hello, my name is Megan Scheck. My address for the record is 1355 Keystone Boulevard, Akron, Ohio, 44320. I would like to express my support for the amendment to Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 150 Environmental Health Housing Code to add sections 150.51 and 150.52. As a social worker for the past 10 years, I have seen the great positive impact stable housing has on individuals and families' ability to make progress in their lives and to positively contribute to the betterment of our collective community. I currently work as a director at a local nonprofit that provides subsidized housing to homeless individuals and families with disabilities. Many of the residents for whom we provide housing have been evicted, which contributed to their homelessness. Further, having an eviction on their record keeps them from being able to find other suitable and safe housing, and many become homeless or stay in unsafe and abusive relationships in order to stay housed. With the pay to stay legislation, we can prevent evictions, lessening the number of homeless individuals and families who come through the housing system. I would also like to encourage you to pass the proposed amendment to Title III, Chapter 38, Unlawful Discrimination, Section 38.01, Definitions. The residents for whom my agency provides housing are often financially able to move on to other housing after living with us for only a short time. They are often eligible for subsidized housing vouchers, allowing them the opportunity to move into a home of their choosing where they can pay a percentage of their income towards a subsidized rent. However, the biggest barrier for them is finding a landlord who will take the subsidy. Unfortunately, many landlords will refuse vouchers because they perceive that these tenants will cause problems. This is simply not true and perpetuates problems of systemic racism, classism, promotes redlining, and disallows tenants from taking advantage of the opportunities presented to them. Using a negative experience a landlord has with a voucher recipient and generalizing that to all other voucher holders is also furthering discrimination. Source of income should be protected the same as other protected classes. Source of income, like the other descriptors listed in the current legislation, is not a choice. The clients I am proud to serve, who have great potential and drive and abilities, often have no other options but to accept housing subsidies and Social Security payments to pay for their expenses. Having legal income to cover the cost of rent should be proof enough that they are eligible for the unit. It should not be a way to further other types of discrimination and to further oppress people. Thank you.
How you doing? This is Bill Rhodes, 2305 East Waterloo Road. I'm against the agenda. Section 8, they should pay their rent like anybody else. We can't carry these people. We have payments to make like everybody else. We have payments on our houses, our everything. You just can't give these people free run, and they're not going to make their rent payments. So I'm totally against it. They got to pay their rent on time like everybody else. I make my payments, and everybody's got to make their payments every month and make their rent payments. Okay. Thank you for letting me talk. Okay. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Nick calling from 41 Marshall Avenue, Ward 1. Good evening, Council. I'd like to just address a few points. Number one, as always, still looking for some representation for Ward 1 while Rich Swirsky is out. Again, it's really unsettling that it's been several months now at Ward 1 of how many, thousands of people have no legitimate representation on council. It's a little undemocratic, and it's really telling that not a single council person is really, listening to these concerns or reaching out, again, about this issue. But more importantly, I wanted to address the tenant protections that council is finally addressing. The pay to stay bill and the source of income protection bill, I definitely support that. I don't really know why there's so much opposition to it from people in the community and even from some city council people. One's a pretty basic anti-discrimination bill, so it strikes me as awfully odd that anybody would be against an anti-discrimination bill. Again, that's just an odd stance to take. And the pay to stay bill is, that's pretty straightforward. Lots of other cities have that. I really don't know why the city of Akron doesn't have either of these bills, especially after over a year now, where we've seen hundreds of continued evictions during a pandemic. It's just crazy that the city of Akron doesn't have this. So first off, I think that y'all would do well to pass both of those bills really immediately, but also understand that Akron has the highest rate of evictions of any major city in Ohio, and so these really just scratch the surface. So we'd also like to see some significant rent control legislation passed to cap rent at median income. Rent in Akron has gone up 53% since 2000, yet median income has only risen 29%. We'd also like for the city and Mayor Horgan to enact a rent moratorium that should have been enacted at the beginning of the pandemic. Again, hundreds of people have been evicted during a deadly pandemic, and the houseless population has just bloomed over the last year. We'd also like for City Council and the Mayor of Oregon to really consider building a community land trust governed by the community to house all houseless people in the city. We have an extreme amount of vacant and empty houses and properties that are just sitting.
Hello, my name is Teresa Brunson, Tennessee. I live at 520 Talbot Avenue. I'm calling in regards to getting the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed here in our area. It's not saying that our police are all bad. It's saying that a reform does need to be made so all are protected, not just the police when they are out here policing and making sure people are safe, but to also make sure that the people that they come in contact with are safe also. Please take this in high consideration and get this act passed. We all need to be safe when we're out in the street so we can all make it back home. Thank you.
Hello, Akron City Council. This is Sharon Irwin at 560 Stevens Road in Akron, and I'm calling to let you know I fully support the amendment to Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 150 Environmental Health Housing Code by adding sections 150.51 and 150.52. I also support amendment to Title 3, Chapter 38, Unlawful Discrimination, Section 38.01, specifically definitions of source of income as it relates to discrimination. I thank you for your time and hope you can pass these amendments. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name's Don Pickering. I live at 1230 Swartz Road, Akron, Ohio. I'm just calling in to just tell you that I'm totally against this program you want to start with Section 8. We have to rent to Section 8 people, and we can't charge them. They can pay late fees now. I'm against that, and if they can't pay, they can't stay, and the courts have to put these people out. They'll find housing other places. They always do. So I'd appreciate if you would listen to this and make a decision and work with us landlords. Don't work against us. It would be better for everybody. So I'm totally against all these rules you're wanting to set. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.
My name is Pastor Greg Harrison, 670 Vernon Odom Boulevard, 44307. I just watched the council committee meeting where the George Floyd Justice While Policing Act was not forwarded to the council as a whole for a vote. I believe this is an injustice to the citizens, especially as we have watched what has transpired over the last 2 years. The reason why we are watching what has transpired is because it is being videotaped. These actions have occurred before. They were just not videotaped. I don't understand how supporting police can be accomplished by not supporting this legislation. How do you support good officers? You get rid of the bad officers. That is supporting good policing. We have not witnessed good policing, and we want to talk about the few bad officers who destroy it or make it bad for the good officers. A bad officer is someone who does not report other bad behavior. This George Floyd Justice Act will mandate licensing of police officer, which makes it a profession, mandatory reporting of bad conduct by officers, which makes everyone safer. I'm not understanding why this legislation cannot go forward for a full vote so we can see who really supports justice and who just talks about justice. Thank you very much.
Heather Hillenbrand, 657 Acton Road. I'm calling in support of the George Floyd Justice While Policing Act. I think it's absolutely shameful if an entirely Democratic council can't get this through. This is very basic. I can only assume you're an absolute racist if you would vote against this. I can't believe we even have to be fighting for this. This is such a small ask.
I'm Bill Nesbitt, R330-379-2235, or 1155 Diagonal Road, Akron, Ohio, 44307. Again, we should have our drop-off box at our original High Street location and get our operations back to our original High Street for the aid of all of our peoples in advancing our Akron. All have a great 2019-2021 from winter to spring Easter season. Thanks for your great service, all.
Yes, my name is Peter Olati. I live at 539 Lovers Lane. I'm in the 5th Ward under Karen Mosley. I'm calling to address off-street parking on vacant lots that used to possess a house. According to what I'm understanding on the city ordinance, 7631 states that you cannot park on a lot that you do not own. You cannot off-street park on it. According to that, I've gone through a lot of problems with neighbors parking on this lot. I know I don't live in Fairlawn on East Road where they want green space. I want the same opportunity to have the green space next to me at 543 Lovers Lane, which is the vacant lot. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope to hear from you. My phone number is 330-352-2082. Thank you.
Hi, this is Fatima Rita, 330-958-4900, 967 Concord, Akron, Ohio. I was calling in regards to the proposed things that you want to do. I do not agree with the pay to stay thing that you want to do. It should be up to the owner of the property to decide whether to accept late rent or not. If the owner does not want to take the rent and wants the person to move, that should be good enough, and the writ should be allowed. Also, the protected class of for Section 8, I think is very, very questionable. I don't believe it should be a protected class. Source of income should not be the issue. How much money you make, whether you can prove it, and whether it's legal or illegal should be important. I called up Section 8 today, and I tried asking questions on some stuff, and I could not get answers. You cannot collect a water deposit. Section 8 will not give you a month-to-month lease to begin with. They have their own contracts. You cannot collect a water deposit. That's another issue. The city should make the tenants responsible for the water bill. Let the city collect a water deposit from the tenants. And if they don't pay after the first month, make them pay all of it or shut it off. It should be their responsibility. We as landlords are giving too much away to tenants these days. They need to learn how to pay for their bills and be responsible. I believe they don't even teach home economics or shop class anymore. People need to learn how to pay their bills and do things to improve themselves and how to set priorities for paying bills. Rent should be paid first, and other things should be decided upon after they have whatever money left over. Thank you. Bye.
My name is Martin Belsky, 344 Village Point Drive in Akron. I am a professor at the University of Akron School of Law and a former prosecutor. I teach courses on criminal justice as well as prosecution function. I'm concerned about a recent decision by members of a committee of City Council to not bring before the full council a resolution to support the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. The community needs to know the position of the elected members of City Council on this important proposed law and its purpose and its policy. We urge Council to consider the resolution proposal to endorse the act. Transparency is not just important, but in a representative democracy, mandated. Thank you for your support. I hope you'll act.
Good afternoon. This is Kathy Reth, and I'm the current chair of the Akron Area Interfaith Council, 3300 Morewood Road, Akron. And we are recommending that you allow for the vote very soon on your acceptance of the George Floyd Justice for Policing Act. We would like for this to come to a vote in the very near future so that we can understand the transparency and the issues involved with the struggle for passage of this in City Council. We're very interested in following through and would like for you to move quickly in bringing this to a full vote. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Vild. I live at 1111 Cary Avenue.
I am the COO and Director of Programming for the Big Love Network, which is Akron's environmental health equity organization. I'm calling again to give my support to the pay to stay and source of income legislation. I was encouraged by today's committee meeting around the positive dialogue happening around this eviction crisis. I would like for us to remember that it's not just the eviction crisis that we're really dealing with here, but an entire ecosystem of how race is perpetuated and white supremacy is perpetuated through our built environment as a city. As you have been fully aware of, source of income will greatly affect desegregating the city, as 75.5% of voucher holders are African American within our city. We also, as a city, have residential segregation county health ranking that goes from 0 to 100, with 0 is no segregation and 100 is complete segregation. We're at a 52%. We also face a 0.5 Gini coefficient index, which rates income inequality between 0 and 1, 0 being no inequality between income and 1 being greatly unequal. We have some of the biggest aging housing stock of any county in Ohio, ranking us 88 out of 88 counties. And to then layer on top of that the heat island effects and the physical and implicit bias tolls of racism on our multiple systems, we start to create the physical environment for the reality that our racial life expectancy difference is 4.3 years difference between Black and white people in Akron, Ohio. This legislation will help to change that, but this is only one piece of these are only two pieces of legislation. We need to, as Councilman Neal said, walk through that full door and continue to fight for reforms that are going to better people's health outcomes in the city, because these are really scary, these are truly terrifying statistics that we are looking at, and I hope to work with all of you as we find solutions as a city. Thank you for hopefully passing this, and please understand.
Madam President and members of the Akron City Council, this is John Beatty, John Beaty, at 2047 Wyndham Road, Akron 44313. My phone number is 330-671-5732. I am a member of a large number of individuals in Akron who are involved in and advocate for social justice. We're concerned about a recent decision to not bring before the full council a resolution to support the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. The community needs to know the position of the elected members of City Council on this important matter. This is a proposed law, and its purpose and policy are extremely relevant. We urge Council to consider the resolution proposal to endorse this extremely important George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Transparency is not just important, but in a representative democracy, it is mandated. Thank you very much.
That concludes our public comments for this evening. I want to thank everyone who participated. We'll now move to our committee assignments. Rules, Councilman Freeman.
2:30.
Public Safety, Councilman Kamer.
2:15.
Budget and Finance, Councilman Freeman.
3 p.m.
Parks and Rec, Councilman Neal.
1:45.
Planning and Economic Development, Councilman Fusco.
1 o'clock.
Housing and Neighborhood Assistance, Councilman Fusco.
3:15.
Public Service, Councilwoman Samples.
2 p.m.
Health and Social Services, Councilwoman Amobian.
2:30.
Public Utilities and Green Committee, Councilman Freeman.
2:45.
Thank you. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Malik?
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to say that in all of this, I try to show as much respect as I can to this body and to all of the members. But I am really frustrated and concerned at the vote that we had earlier today in public safety. This kind of resolution, it's symbolic, but it should be easy. This is a bill to reform policing, to address concerns about systemic racism, a bill that's passed the United States House of Representatives with the support of the President of the United States. I mean, the only controversial part of this bill is something that's controversial because our ideas of what's reasonable have been so constrained by politics. I mean, qualified immunity is a way that prevents officers from being liable after they have been found to do something incredibly heinous, right? And we're not talking about a run-of-the-mill interaction. We're not talking about someone being sued for doing their job. We're talking about someone being sued for not doing their job in a horrific way. If you look at the examples of cases that we were talking about. And so it shouldn't be controversial, but, and again, it is a resolution, but the symbolism does matter, right? If we can't do the small things like this, then how can we do the things that are legitimately hard, right? Addressing the issues like gun violence that we talked about after that vote. I've struggled over the last year and a half in my time on council with how to view my own expectations of what's possible here, and how to balance that against the systems that we're dealing with. But the pace of change is too slow. We've heard that we don't have problems here in Akron with regard to policing or with regard to systemic racism. And that's, it's not true. And we see an instance of an officer using excessive force and the police union saying that it was reasonable. And we still hear that we don't have these problems. But we are so far from where we need to be. And I hope that we'll get there.
Thank you so much, Councilman Malik. Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo my colleagues' sentiments. I want to talk on two things. First, as council, it's difficult for us to talk about these issues when we do not have a normalized consensus group understanding of what we're talking about. It concerns me because we talk about race and equity, but this council has not been educated on what are government best practices when addressing these issues. There are some things that happen from this council that are, you can document and see the institutional, the structural and institutional practices that emulate those of I'm just going to say it, a racist council. I can point to the pieces of legislation that will show that. The structural practices that block certain legislation that deal with certain issues in certain populations in our community. But because this council, I don't know if it's intentional or if it's because people think it's just politics. But it concerns me because this council is going to be voting on issues like this. We've got the mayor's race task force document that was just sent to us. but you cannot address those issues when you're ignorant of what you're supposed to be dealing with. And folks don't like that word, but if we do not as a group go through racial equity training and understanding, either by intention or by default, because that's the way this system works. We got to understand government is one of the pillars of structural and institutional racism. And you think you're just playing, doing politics because you working to have certain votes, but really what you're doing is creating racial disparable practices in how we execute policy. So this is what I'd like to see. We got a letter or an email from our Miss Eve Belfance over the law department about speaking on issues in relation to housing. But in issues like this, we've got to learn about structural institutional racism, but also if you have received money from a union, dealing with issues that impact the union, we don't get these letters from the law department in regards to that. We get it in regards to housing. We need to be transparent on where our interests lie. So, you know, I'm past frustrated. I think this council needs to step up and address the issues that have been brought before us by our constituents.
Thank you, Councilman Neal. Councilwoman Samples?
Thank you, Madam President. I echo the sentiments of both my colleagues. I don't want to belabor the hour. However, I do want to say I appreciate that over the last few weeks, we've had some very hot topic pieces of legislation and resolutions that have come before this council that we have been able to take time on to look over the legislation and to make informed decisions. And even if that meant reading a 138-page document, we were able to take the time to do that. I do hope that this council will make that a common practice when we bring in legislation that everyone may not agree on, but we respect each other enough to, if that author of that legislation is asking for time for us to review and have a conversation, I hope that we will do that with all pieces that come in, regardless of who the authors of that legislation is. I think that's one thing that we can do to try to add some transparency to our process and to be respectful of our colleagues. As there's been times when, depending on who the author is, it gets killed in committee. I think we need to take time. We took time on the pay to stay. We've taken time on the George Floyd resolution to give people time to read the House bill. And I think we need to make that a common practice, whether you support it or not, whether you take a week or 2 weeks to read it. If you don't support it, you're not going to support it, but you should at least have some deference to that author and to your colleagues who may want to take a deep dive. I just think that's something we need to think about and move forward with doing as a ongoing practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Samples. Councilman Freeman?
Yes, I wasn't on the committee today, but one of the concerns, I should have said it in committee today, one of the concerns I have, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but it seems like with the piece that the House has developed that they are making body cameras mandatory for police departments, and we've seen in Akron what unfunded mandates look like from the federal government, and so that is one piece that I have a problem with. If I'm wrong, please let me know. But it looks like they are mandating that all police departments have body cams, and I think with that, if they're going to come with the funding and say, y'all have to have body cams, and oh, by the way, here's enough money to supply everyone with body cams. So that's just one piece that I kind of trip up on. There's a couple others, but thank you. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Neal?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to share with the colleagues who have the concern about the body cam that the Ohio Municipal League, who we are a member of, tracks and follows Governor DeWine's policing policies, and the body cam legislation that's been brought up in this and in other things is supported by all the law enforcement departments. I understand the concern about funding. I would like to say that legislators are working on finding funding. The funding problem isn't with the body cams, it's with the storage. But you won't find police departments that have problems with being asked to have body cams. The challenge is finding the funding for them. But the body cameras protect the officers as well as the citizens.
Thank you, Councilman Neal, for sharing. Is there anything else coming before council at this time? Councilman Fusco?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. If there are no objections, meeting adjourned.
This concludes the live broadcast of Akron City Council. Margot Somerville, President of Council, presiding.